Last night, after something like 14 hours of almost entirely needless, purposeless, non-binding amendments being thrown forward almost universally by Republicans, the Votapalooza ended, and we did get one step closer to the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill being passed. It was approved early Friday, and it paves the way for passage of President Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package, with Vice President Harris casting the tie-breaking vote on the measure. It will be key to enacting Biden's first major legislative initiative. So importantly, it's not done. Like, we don't now have the stimulus package. With this resolution's adoption, congressional Democrats have now cleared the last hurdle to unlocking the budget maneuver known as reconciliation, which will allow the party to pass the sprawling relief bill without relying on GOP votes, which is probably good because they didn't get any, none. We've been waiting to find out. And like, by the way, we're gonna go through some of the amendments that we have. Some Republican amendments passed. So Republican senators went onto the floor and proposed stupid amendments, and they got them, and then they said, oh, have fun with that. I'm not voting for your bill. They didn't get any. And we'll go over some of those amendments in a minute, but I wanted to give both of you an opportunity to talk about us getting one step closer to this $1.9 trillion stimulus bill.
For now, I just have one quick comment. If we've already passed the vote that, or the resolution that would allow for us to pass the entire relief bill through reconciliation, meaning we only need 50 votes, meaning we don't need a single Republican vote, why hasn't the bill passed yet? Why are we still negotiating with Republicans if we don't need a single Republican vote? Is it to make them happy? And why do the Democrats want to make Republican politicians happy? They run against them. And if you said, well, it's to make Republican voters happy, well, we know for a fact that that's not true. Poll came out yesterday saying that 2/3 of Republican voters want the Democratic version of the bill. So if you wanted real bipartisanship, you'd pass the bill immediately. If you wanted to do what you promised the voters, you'd pass the bill immediately. If you wanted to make Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell happy rather than the entire nation, 80% of whom want this bill passed, well, then you'd pass the bill. So and if you wanted to make Cruz and McConnell happy, you wouldn't pass the bill and you'd look to compromise with them. So what are we doing here? I know the mainstream media doesn't like to point out facts because they're inconvenient to their corporate agenda. But the reality is the only reason we're waiting is because Joe Biden and the Democratic Party wants to water down the bill a little bit more so they can make McConnell and Cruz happy, and it's insanity.
I would piggyback off something that you just said, which is I think there's been this really insidious sleight of hand in the media that has conflated Washington bipartisanship with actual bipartisanship. Like you mentioned, 2/3 of Americans prefer the Democratic version of the bill, the bigger version of the COVID relief bill. 2/3 of Americans do not want the Cruz version of the bill. They do not want Susan Collins' version of the bill. A thing that I think that so-called moderate Democrats are trying to do, or establishment Democrats are trying to do, is pretend like they're going to be bipartisan because they've convinced themselves that it matters that they do a little bit of play acting toward this fake notion of bipartisanship in order to make voters happy. I don't know a single person, Republican, Democrat, progressive, conservative, who really wants their elected official to pretend like they're going to do something before they agree to do something. I guess Susan Collins has made an entire career of pretending to be troubled by something and then doing whatever she wants. But I don't understand. I agree with you. I don't understand why the urgency in this mandates that it be done yesterday, and it's not. And I think it also speaks to a complete disconnect between people who are working in Washington and the average American. I don't think most of these people shop for their own groceries or know how much a gallon of milk costs.
Yeah, 100%. And so look, they still have to write the bill. They have to get all the details hammered out and everything. There is still plenty of time for them to negotiate with themselves because as we've talked about, they don't need to negotiate with the Republicans at this point. And it's been demonstrated to them how pointless it is because the Republicans aren't gonna sign on no matter what. But they have to get this done by March 14th. Some boosted jobless benefits will expire then, and they have indicated that that's when they think they will pass the bill. So it is more than a month away still. And as I talked about on the damage report this morning, the debate that was had about 1,400 versus 2,000, it's pointless to go over that again. Let's say that devil's advocate, they always meant that it would be a total of 2,000. They meant it should have been on January 3rd, it should be 2,000, and we're just gonna finish the job of 2,000. Well, it is very notably not January 3rd right now. And on March 14th, it's gonna be even less January 3rd than it was today. And so if you think that people deserve $2,000 on January 3rd, what about all of that time? What about the 6 or 7 weeks it'll take before they finally get the stimulus? What did they go into, like a chrysalis stage? Did they hibernate for the winter? They've been accruing new costs and new debts, and their jobs haven't been coming back, and the country is in kind of the same bad COVID situation it was back then. So even if you legitimately meant 2,000 then, like there's so much more cost now. And if you're gonna be passing it on your own, why not shift more of the money of this $1.9 trillion specifically to the direct payments to make up for the fact that people have a couple more months of rent and paying for food and health insurance and transportation and all of that. So it's just frustrating to see that, like, we're not accounting for any of that. We're supposed to be so happy with this number that was negotiated a couple of months ago, and the smaller version of it still remains.
And I don't understand why Democrats can't over deliver on this. They have the votes. I mean, unfortunately, Kamala Harris is gonna have to treat the Senate like it's a baby that she's babysitting, crying every 2 hours. She has to go down to the Senate and cast a tie-breaking vote. But Democrats have the votes, and what they could do is actually make these payments bigger. So give people an upside surprise, give people more of a reason to not vote for Republicans, not vote for people who are gonna further choke them. One of the major problems with this, in addition to how much time has passed and how this isn't the $2,000 that Democrats won the Senate on in Georgia, is the fact that targeting money for people based on what people made in 2019 makes no sense to me. It also makes no sense that in the $2,000 means a different thing to different people depending on what part of the country they live in. Like where I live in Los Angeles, it's a lot more expensive to exist than it is in some more rural parts of the country. And the fact that people like Joe Manchin and centrists are holding up payments that would actually benefit people in urban areas more is really upsetting to me. It gives me a headache.
Yeah, look, they force us to question their intent or intelligence. Because if you actually wanted a $2,000, it's easy. You say, all right, Republicans, every day you delay, I'm gonna increase it by $100. So Monday it's gonna be $2,100. Then my request on Tuesday is gonna be $2,200, and up and up and up we're gonna go. When would you like to make the goddamn deal? Okay, you don't want to make a deal? Good, no problem. I have 50 votes and I don't need a single one of your votes. And so what would you do if that happened? What would happen? That you would send a message to the American people, we're on your side. Democrats are on your side, and we're trying to get you the most amount of relief. Now, just to be absolutely clear, it's 2/3 of Republican voters who want it. For the country, it's 80% of the country who wants it. So is this complicated? Is this complicated politics? Would you rather be on the 80% side or the 20% side? Democrats, if you can't make up your mind, I've got to question your intelligence or your intent. Just pass the damn bill and be done with it. What are we waiting a whole nother month for, other than to help your political opponents, you knuckleheads? Okay, Jesus Christ, let's get on to the amendments.
Exactly. Okay, so amendments that passed, and we are not going to go through all 500. That should probably go without saying. But here are some that I thought were worth talking about. An effort to block stimulus payments to undocumented immigrants actually passed, with 8 Democrats in the Senate voting in favor of it, as well as an effort to overturn Biden's blocking of the Keystone XL pipeline. Manchin and Tester, among the Democrats, voted in favor of that. These are, as I noted earlier, these are non-binding amendments, but I think it's still worthwhile to know which Democrats are in favor of this. And as of right now, that is supposed to be a directive for the writing of the stimulus bill. Amendments that failed include something to stop the packing of the Supreme Court. Has a lot to do with the stimulus bill. Blocking stimulus checks to inmates, because America will never get tired of demonizing people who are locked up, and banning a federal tax on carbon. So a lot of this is just trying to send a signal or being able to say that you pushed for something. But some of it did actually pass. And so at least in theory, it could affect the final writing of this legislation.
All right, I remember the Republicans complaining 1,000 times about, oh, the Democrats are putting irrelevant things into a bill. Wait, what does Keystone XL pipeline have anything to do with the COVID relief? They proposed an amendment about Israel's or our embassy in Israel. Well, that's an interesting issue, but what on God's green earth does that have to do with COVID relief? So, and they delayed and delayed by putting all these amendments up for a vote, and the Democrats said it was okay. They let the Republicans, in their minds at least, score all these political points. Why? Again, they want to be bipartisan. And how did that work out for them? And Bernie Sanders pointed this out. So we opened up the floor. We let them propose all the amendments. It's as bipartisan as you can get, and some of them even passed. These are all Republican amendments, right? And then how many Republicans voted for the bill with their amendments in it? 0, as John pointed out in the beginning. 0. So not only do we know that the reaching out to Republicans doesn't work generally, not only did the Barack Obama and Joe Biden administration prove that for 8 years straight, but they literally proved it in this exact vote. So why are we still talking? As soon as they give you 0 votes on a bill that you allowed them to propose 14 hours of amendments on, you go, well, hey, mission accomplished. We did our bipartisanship, we reached out, and they reached back out with a slap across the face, not just to us, but the American people. Well, we're not gonna tolerate it. There's a new sheriff in town. We're passing the whole thing right now. But the Democrats have never had that kind of strength, and it appears Joe Biden does not today either.
I mean, if they're non-binding resolutions, why don't they just whisper them into jars or put them in a like those light up paper bags that look so pretty at some holidays? It just, to me, it seems like it's like you're having a wedding. I just had a wedding. Having a wedding is not great, not fun until you actually get to the day. But it's like having a wedding. But let's say you have a mother-in-law who wants to dictate everything that happens at the wedding. Nope, we're not having any meat. Nope, we're having a cash bar. We're doing this. The colors are this. The colors are this. And then she doesn't show up. That is literally what Democrats are doing. They're letting their bad mother-in-law plan the wedding, and she's not coming anyway. Just do what you want. Plan your own wedding. It's your day, guys. You're in charge, guys and girls. You're in charge. This is your day. Make it yours. I really, really hate all the grandstanding that goes on around bills like this, because at the end of the day, it is grandstanding, unless they were planning on piping the vaccine through the Keystone XL pipeline, which maybe that's what they were planning on doing. Really efficient way to transport a lot of liquid. But the thing is, like, what is happening now is people like Tom Cotton have gotten a chance to appease lobbyists, appease big donors by saying, well, I made an effort to do this thing, and it is at the expense of the American people. People need relief. Like I said, people need it yesterday. People needed it on January 3rd. People needed it last year, and it hasn't come to the degree that it should have. And this is what they're doing with their time. This is what they're doing with time that they are being paid for by the taxpayers. It's gross. This is exactly why people hate politics. It is people grandstanding on the taxpayers' dime when what we need for them to do is govern and get people what they need.
Yeah, Erin, I can't help but say 2 things about that. So number one, you're of course right about all of this, but when you put forward legislation, it at least gives you some sense of what they want. And so one of the things we learned about Republicans is that the tax cuts for the rich that Donald Trump passed, which coincidentally were 1.9 trillion, the exact amount of this COVID relief bill, coincidentally, they say it's not enough. We now want to make them permanent. So it's rolling trillions of dollars. So by the end, it could be 10, 20 trillion dollars for the rich, and 83% of it goes to the top 1%. So they said, we want your checks to be lower, Americans, but we want millionaire and billionaires' checks to be way, way, way higher. And we're still negotiating with these guys? Come on, man. No, look, Democrats feel like they need Republican permission to act or to exist. We're here trying to snap you out of it. You don't need Republican permission to lead when you have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And if you think you do, you're sending the message to people, remember, everyone, including us, thinks that the Republicans should be in charge. And you might want to remember that next election. It just doesn't get any dumber than that.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.